Okay, let's get right into it. Have you ever actually stopped to wonder what clicking accept on a random cookie banner for a website in Finland, physically mailing a paper application for a teacher's license in Virginia, and building a high-tech governance architecture for autonomous AI in Norway all have in common? I mean, it sounds like the setup to a really strange joke, right? But I promise you, they are all secretly trying to solve the exact same foundational problem: trust and authority. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to unpack exactly how we build systems that prove who we are, verify what we're actually allowed to do, and control how actions get executed out there in the real world.
Here's a quick look at our roadmap for this explainer. We'll kick things off with the illusion of digital control, move right through certifying human authority and financial trust, explore this fascinating thing called the AI execution gap, uncover the governance elephant, and finally tie the whole shebang into a unified system of action. Let's do this.
All right, Part 1. The illusion of digital control. Cookies, bots, and basic friction.
So think about this for a second. How do the systems we use every single day actually know who we are? We constantly face these little digital speed bumps everywhere we go online. But you have to ask yourself, do these systems actually govern behavior, or are they literally just checking boxes in the dark? Just consider our daily digital reality. You visit the University of Helsinki's website, and right away you're stopped. You have to give explicit consent for functional and statistical cookies using tools like Cookiebot and Matomo. Or try accessing Penn State's electronic thesis database. Boom, you hit a JavaScript firewall that's just checking if you're a human or a bot. Or say you use a financial app like Value Research, your data absolutely has to be encrypted in transit just for basic protection. Now, these all represent your basic compliance and security, but here's the catch. They're totally isolated blind spots. A cookie banner doesn't have a clue if you're a bot, and a bot checker doesn't know if your data is encrypted. They are just tiny disconnected pieces of a much, much larger puzzle.
Which brings us to Part 2, Certifying Human Authority, the Virginia VALO System.
So how does all this build when the stakes get higher? Like when we actually need to grant human authority to act within a strict institutional framework? Well, let's look at the Virginia Department of Education. They had this legacy eGov system that literally just went offline on December 31st, 2024. It was notoriously manual. We're talking paper applications that had to be physically mailed to a P.O. box in Richmond. Crazy, right? Well, they've since rolled out a modernized solution, the new Virginia Licensure Online Portal, affectionately known as VELO. This new system finally enables online tracking, digital document uploads, and direct payments. But notice what hasn't changed at all: the rigorous human verification required to actually gain that authority.
To be granted authority as a teacher in Virginia, a person still has to jump through a ton of rigorous hoops. You have to obtain a bachelor's degree with official transcripts, complete specific coursework, pass prescribed assessments, and finish student teaching way before you ever earn that statutory licensure. And this is an absolutely crucial point. Capability is distinctly different from legal authority. You might be a total genius and perfectly capable of teaching a math class, but without completing these verified manual steps, you simply do not have the institutional mandate to step foot in that classroom.
Moving right along to Part 3, Financial Trust and Structures, Institutionalizing Authority. Now, how do trust and authority scale up to manage massive, highly complex physical assets out in the financial world? Take the Real Estate Investment Trust, or a REIT. A REIT is basically a company that owns and operates income-producing real estate. Think huge office buildings, hospitals, or even commercial forests. By adhering to a really strict set of legal frameworks, they act as a bridge for institutional investors, and in return, they get reduced corporate and capital gains taxes. This is a brilliant illustration of how legal frameworks institutionalize trust to direct massive amounts of capital safely.
But here's the thing. Institutional trust isn't static. It changes. Back in 1960, the very first REITs were created mostly as mortgage companies. By 1976, a Tax Reform Act came along and authorized them to be established as corporations. Then jumped to 1986, and another Tax Reform Act completely alters the landscape by targeting partnership tax shelters. Trust structures are living things. They have to constantly adapt over decades just to maintain their authority and their value.
All right, Part 4. The AI execution gap, when machines act.
Okay, we've talked about web cookies, human licenses, and huge real estate portfolios. But what happens when autonomous AI starts taking action without these traditional slow human speed bumps in the way? A Norwegian AI firm called Value Research points out a really critical flaw in how we do things today. They say, AI governance stops too late. And what they mean by that is most AI governance today just describes policies, risks, and documentation. It completely misses the execution path. It completely misses that exact, precise moment where an AI's output becomes a real-world consequence. So, to solve this gap, Valo Research created the RHT layer. This is basically the missing bridge between an AI's reasoning and real-world execution. The flow goes a little something like this. First, reality, what is actually true right now? Second, authority, who delegated the action? Third, and honestly this is the huge missing piece, admissibility. Is the action actually legitimate to execute given the current state of the world? Only after all that do we finally get to execution, followed by a receipt that proves exactly what happened.
Valo breaks this whole concept down into 3 cohesive product directions. First up, their Factory OS observes work to find capability gaps and builds workflows. Second, the governed workforce deploys these role agents with strictly bounded authority and mandatory human escalation. And third, consequence simulation weighs the actual risks of acting versus just waiting before execution. Remember our Virginia teacher from earlier? Just because an AI is capable of sending an email or changing a customer record doesn't mean it actually has the authority to do so. The system ensures it fundamentally lacks that authority without a strict mandate.
Let's move to part 5, the governance elephant, seeing the whole picture.
To truly see how all these seemingly isolated systems finally connect, we have to look at a core metaphor, the 8 blind men and the governance elephant. You know the old parable, right? The blind men touch different parts of an elephant and think they're feeling a wall, a spear, or a snake. Well, our different digital disciplines are doing the exact same thing. They only see isolated pieces of systemic trust.
When we actually map out these disciplines, the problem becomes super clear. The identity team, like those web cookies in Helsinki we talked about, they look at the elephant and just see a passport. They only want to know who is acting. Security sees armor. They just want encryption, like our Value Research app. Compliance, like our Virginia teacher's license, well, they see a law book, just looking to prove we follow the rules. Risk management just sees a risk model. They're all super important, for sure, but none of them alone can make a final holistic governance decision. They are literally just observing tiny parts of the animal.
So the crucial takeaway from all this is that true governance is the central nervous system. It's the centralized decision layer, what Valo calls the admissibility layer, that connects all of these blind perspectives into a single unified truth before an action is allowed to execute. It evaluates identity, security, compliance, and risk all at the exact same time to basically ask, given the system's current state, should this action actually be allowed?
And finally, part 6, a unified system of action, bringing it all together.
When we link these manual human systems directly to our automated AI future, a pretty fascinating contrast emerges. We have 2 systems that, quite coincidentally, share the name Valo, and they are trying to solve the exact same problem from totally opposite ends of the spectrum. On one side, the Virginia Valo system relies on human administrators manually verifying transcripts over months just to grant human authority. On the flip side, the Norwegian Valo system evaluates data in milliseconds using RAACS-controlled execution and VIG evaluation to grant automated, receipt-backed authority to an AI agent. But whether we're talking about a human or a machine, the universal need is exactly the same: verified, documented proof of authority before any action takes place.
Which leaves us with this final, somewhat provocative thought to wrap up our explainer today. From annoying website cookies to rigid tax laws, all the way to the deployment of autonomous AI agents, as our digital systems grow infinitely complex, who is actually holding the leash? How are we going to ensure that human intent remains at the absolute center of the actions our machines take on our behalf? Thank you so much for exploring this architecture of trust with me today. Keep asking the hard questions, and I'll see you next time.